Hey everybody, we are here. It's me, DrekkSama with Caerwyn, and we're here to talk about Immortal Gates of Pyre. It is a new battle strategy. Right now it's quite in pre-alpha, but a lot of people here on our channel and our audience are StarCraft fans, and you guys are probably wondering if this game is for you. I've had a lot of conversation with our community if this game is going to be something that, really will transition to. But I'll get into that all a bit later. Caerwyn, how are you feeling? Are you excited for this discussion?
Yeah, I'm actually very, very excited. I've been playing StarCraft for quite a few years, and it's been like a very long time before there's like suddenly a new RTS to think about. So the entire topic is actually very exciting.
Well, I think everybody's kind of on the edge of their seats to know where do we go next, right? People are waiting for, obviously, Immortal. Some people are waiting for Frost Giant's new game. Some people are even considering Age of Empires. And because StarCraft is reaching this point where it's, let's not mince words, it's like close to end of life. Still a great game. We're all still playing it, but Blizzard is not giving any updates. And these new games are coming out on the horizon. And what do we as a community, what do people in the community do? Where do the pro players go? So for this preview, we're going to this is not a review. We're not reviewing the game. It's pre-alpha. There's nothing to review. But we're going to just talk about our general feelings and sense of where this game is. First thing to start, though, you mentioned RTS, and they would prefer to call it battle strategy.
That is true. And I've tried keeping that in mind for the entire last half an hour, and I immediately messed it up. But it's good because I think from now on I'll remember. And yeah, battle strategy it is, which is a term I've not heard before. It's quite interesting, actually.
Because it's new. I think that we're in this cusp where the people in Immortals are going to try to forge their own path and try to pull themselves away from the RTS, whether that's because of RTS has a stigma approach to it, or they think that maybe by capturing a whole new space like MOBA, MOBA being a brand new thing, League of Legends was huge because they captured a battle arena, like these new terms. When you create a new space and you win in that space, you kind of blow up big. I don't know, but that would be what I would speculate why they would go with the term battle strategy.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point I haven't thought of before, which is like the whole trying to capture like the first place in like a new genre, just like MOBAs. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. Mm-hmm. Like I can kind of see why. It's kind of a fun term, honestly, as well. It just sounds fun, battle strategy. Yeah. It adds something to it.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of add something to it. And, I guess the real-time strategy has this conjuring this idea of mechanics, right? High-end, steep learning mechanics. And I didn't get the impression from Immortal that mechanics was the core thing you have to learn to be good at this game. I didn't get that impression.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these new RTS we mentioned before, be it the Frost Giant, who also kind of made remarks about this, and Immortal especially, as Immortal is already in pre-alpha. A lot of these games, they're kind of emphasizing to deal with the problem of the RTS games, of course, Immortal being the battle strategy game, but it kind of seems like the battle strategy is just another step of addressing like the stigma of the old RTS games, which is the whole very steep learning curve, hardcore mechanics. And I feel like there is it's not that mechanics don't exist. Like on the few games I played, I can say that you can improve your mechanics. There are mechanics to improve them. It's not as hardcore. It's like more open to like a bigger audience. I think it is easier to get into, I believe.
Well, I almost feel like mechanics isn't the core. Like if we were talking about in scale of direction of mechanic difficulty, you have Brood War on the highest side of your mechanics of micromanaging every part of your economy, and then you have StarCraft in the middle where it is all about macro management, but a lot of things are automated for you in terms of your workers are taken care of in the first beginning, and like these small quality of life things are done for you. And now I think Immortals takes that a little bit further, where a lot of your earlier mechanics and macro mechanics are sort of managed for you. I feel like there is a space there to allow the player to focus more on the strategy, which is what I hope for when playing this game. But I don't think I have enough experience. I don't think the game has enough. A lot of we're still in pre-alpha, not enough to know what kind of strategies can come from this. So
yeah, exactly. I feel like the whole strategical depth of the game, we can't make a comment about it yet. It's too early.
Way too early. Too early.
Yeah, I can say that based on the early things that I've experienced, I think there will be strategic depth. I think there's a lot to look forward to. But I think it is like too early in this stage to make any comments about or even making comparisons.
Well, let's talk about something we can make comparisons. Let's start off with one of the what does this game feel like to you in terms of other games you've played?
Other games that are similar to Immortal Gates of Pyre would be obviously StarCraft, which I've spent the most time on as well. I did play a bit of Warcraft 3 and the Command and Conquer games. When I was young, I played a lot of them. I don't really get the vibe of Command and Conquer off of Immortal Gates of Pyre. It feels to me somewhere in the middle grounds between Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2.
So I was actually to make the comments like Warcraft 3 is my jam. I played a crap ton of Warcraft 3, and this feels a lot close to Warcraft 3, but almost the co-op mode of StarCraft 2 in a way, with the overarching, abilities and stuff like that. It reminds me a lot like the co-op mode in StarCraft 2 from the ability perspective.
Yeah, I actually completely agree on this. I had to I would locate Immortal between these games were probably closer to Warcraft 3, but also the whole abilities from a commander from an Immortal. Commander is the StarCraft term, Immortal of course being the term in Immortal Gates of Fire. Then the whole Immortal that's not present on the battlefield, it feels very similar to the StarCraft commanders in co-op.
Yeah.
StarCraft 2.
It feels a lot like Commander, like the Commander feature. That comes to me. And I want to point out, I really do like the heroes. I know there's a big controversy of people not liking heroes and not liking the, hero RTSs and those kind of things. And I kind of like it. I like that. I don't know, like I said, we don't know anything about strategic depth, but I feel like it will make for an extremely fun game to play when it comes to the abilities. But what I do worry about is maybe from a visual perspective, if it's too much for the screen. Like when people watch it on Twitch or people watch it in like tournament level at the highest level, will there be too much going on for people to follow? So that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I think it'll be manageable. From what I've seen so far is not what it's going to be in the end, but I think that is going to be manageable. Like I don't think there's going to be like a sensory overload, maybe a bit in like a very big fight interaction of like both abilities, I guess. But I don't think that's quite going to happen. Like too much going on the screen.
Well, I think immediately about Warcraft 3, and when you have 3 heroes on this screen, doing their abilities at the same time. What does that look like? Does that look like, it looks like a lot of just graphical interfaces flashing. From Immortal's perspective, at least you could follow the hero, I think, in watching Warcraft 3. Like, I find that easier while there's no central character. Like, I played Orzum, and when I used his ability, Orzum did appear on the screen. He popped up and did his ability and popped away. So maybe, in a large scale battle, it won't be too much of a mess to follow. So
yeah, right. Exactly. And I feel like that's the benefit of having the Immortal not present on the battlefield. There's less going on. There's more, like, it's a bit visually clearer to see what's going on. And then you can follow the armies, which would be pretty interesting.
I guess that's true.
Army movements.
Yeah, because if you don't have the character on the screen, but you have him pop up briefly, you at least give the audience to know who's using an ability, and without necessarily having them having to follow. So yeah, I didn't really think of it like that. Like, which Immortal did you end up playing?
Sadly, I didn't make it in time for the Aru, which are just the love of my heart. I really love their design. Like, even artistically, without playing them, I just love the Aru. So I played a few games of Orzum and a few games of Ayari. And then I think the best out of the few games I played was with Ayari. I was doing some cheeky plays with the ability to... I don't know if recall is the correct term or not, so forgive me if it isn't. It's been far too long. Recall-like ability.
Yeah, okay, you know what? Before we even jump into that design, I want to say, I really like it. I actually am super big fan of the design. Very Greek style, very like, gods. Like, obviously they're immortal, but it reminds me of like 300 for some reason, like the Greek gods and the, that aesthetic feels really awesome to me. So the Quoth faction, I think, is probably the faction I will lean towards. But how do you think the Aru though look very organic, very planty, very?
Look like they represent the forest really well. I don't know. It's just gives me a whole forest druids kind of vibe, and I really like it. And just in general, this whole subject is one of my favorite things with Immortal Gates of Pyre is their design. Not only in-game, but even the art they released. I'm an absolute gigantic fan of all the art they've been releasing. It looks spectacular, everything. Unit, concept art, etc., etc. It all looks really, really good. So I think that's something really impressive that they've been doing.
Yeah, if anything to be said about this game at all is that the art is top notch. I'm getting a great love because another good comparison people have been talking about is like, I've talked to people whether they would play, go to Age of Empire, and they felt like there's not a lot of distinction between the different civs in Age of Empire. There's a thing about StarCraft, right? And I don't know if anyone else gets this, but you kind of like lean towards the race you played based on the kind of like maybe sci-fi stuff you like or the kind of person you are. Like I like the Protoss because I like the high elf style of, basically we're awesome kind of characters and factions. So I'm always a big fan of that. So I lean towards Protoss. I don't know if anyone else is this, and I'm kind of making this up myself, but when I played the campaign, that was kind of, I like the Protoss campaign. I like the voices, and I get that feeling from the Quoth is that this almost high group of people, high race of faction of Immortals who think they're better. But
yeah, they definitely send a very regal feeling when you like look at their art, play that like very regal feeling, and the arrows, like just with the art they chose, they managed to give you like a completely distinct, different than the Krath. That's right? Krath. Yeah. Like completely distinct feeling to it. The arrow feel a lot more from the forest. They have their just the whole art direction is completely different.
Yeah,
they have their rootway as well, like from the buildings.
Very organic. And then there's the third one, which is the Jorah, and I don't think I haven't seen any art from the Jorah.
I don't think there is. Maybe art, but they're definitely not in game yet. That I can tell you for sure.
No, they're not. They're just
and I don't think art yet as well. Yeah,
I like that step of getting those factions to feel separate, and I'm a big fan of that going forward.
I think it's very important for like strategy games, like a battle strategy game, to do is you don't want to end up in a position where every faction feels the same.
Well, that's it, right? And I think people, I'm sure Age of Empire diehards will disagree with me, but I don't feel like there's a personal attachment to any particular civ in Age of the Empire, because they all, and the units, everything kind of feels the same. Well, I kind of feel this attachment with me and Orzum, where I'm like, okay, Orzum, you and I, we can make this, we can do this, we can run. So I'm kind of feeling that so far. So I'm, the games I think I have about 20-ish plus games under my belt, and
that's a respectable amount.
Yeah, I think so. And so let's talk about just the gameplay and mechanics that we've experienced. I want to come out and say straight out, the thing I love the most about all of this is the hotkey system. Feels a little weird at first. It felt a little weird. But I love this idea of, you can 100%, anyone who plays StarCraft 2 and you use the core, you can definitely tell Jack Attack's, hand in designing this. It feels very intuitive. It feels very much like the core. I think it's going to be, for me at least, a huge selling point for the game.
But when I started it, I was just getting back to SE2, so I was playing Immortal off of the backs of spamming a lot of StarCraft games, so it was very, very hard to get used to the hotkeys, because they're different from how I hotkey in StarCraft.
Are you standard or do you grid? How do you do
that? I use standard with a few modifications, but yeah, mostly standard.
Oh, yeah, that would feel really foreign.
So yeah, it did not feel the same, but I feel like if you like play enough, you get used to it, and it's pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
They definitely, they don't feel bad. I'll say this. I wasn't used to them, but they don't feel bad. The hotkeys actually feel like if you play enough, you're going to get used to them, and they're going to be comfortable for you. So yeah, that's one thing. What I really like gameplay-wise, leaving the art, is kind of the fight for the Pyre, which is kind of like, we have to talk about the resources, I guess. So there's alloys, and there is ether. And if you want to make comparisons to SC2, then alloy is kind of like the mineral type, ether is like the gas type. And then there's the third resource, which obviously StarCraft doesn't have one. And in Immortal Gates of Pyre, it's the Pyre. Now, the Pyre isn't used to like just, it's not your normal resource. Basically, you use it to power abilities. And I really like this whole fight for the Pyre type of deal. It does remind me a lot of like the creep camps in Warcraft 3, like the same.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, this idea of trying to get to the. It didn't feel it right now. At the start, it doesn't feel as high stakes as the creep camps, because the different creep units, and we're too early to say what it will look like when we get to evolve. But creep camps are pretty like the same all the way through. But I felt that feeling of creeping and trying to get to it before my opponent, as a, okay, I out there making sure I'm getting Pyre. It's like this thing in my head I was keep like beating into myself. Say, okay, make sure I'm at least keeping my opponent from getting Pyre, if anything.
My feeling from playing the game is that it's very like the core of the match, like in the competitive like idea of it is a very maneuvering game rather than mechanics heavy. It feels very maneuvering heavy. So like you're trying to like go to the edge bases, like the outer bases, and trying to deny them or snipe them, or you're always in a fight for Pyre camps around the map. Like there's a lot of maneuvering going on in Immortal, and I feel like that's kind of like where the game shines. Like that's deciding factor of matches, I feel like.
When you say maneuvering, are you saying the idea of like, attacking bases while at the same time getting Pyre? Like, how do you...
Well, not even necessarily like multitasking of doing those two at once, but it's just the game encourages you not to be in the same place the entire game.
Okay.
Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Like the way the game works, you're encouraged to be maneuvering around the map.
Okay.
Like, 1 second you're taking a Pyre, then you're going to another camp, then you're trying to find like a crack in the defense of the other players.
Being active,
like it's,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the way the match works, it encourages players to be active with the units they make.
Yeah.
Which I think is important.
I think it discourages turtling. And it discourages turtling by especially having the Pyre being such an important resource. You need to be out there moving around.
I feel like the Pyre itself is a mechanic that already just decreases the like ability to turtle.
Yeah.
Already. Just the existence of Pyre.
Basically just having Pyre discourages it. I like that. Actually, I didn't even think about it like that, but it likes like I feel like Pyre is, and we'll see obviously in the more of the higher levels of the game, that Pyre comes across as the thing that differentiates the battles and how what games can be swung left or right based on how much Pyre is involved. And obviously as abilities of the Immortal are more fleshed out, more Pyre and the different types of Pyre abilities will make the bigger difference in the match or swing them. I haven't seen, and I don't know if, from my games that I've played, how much the abilities can, because like in Warcraft 3, a really fed like hero can just wipe you could get wiped right out from like, even if you have better mechanics and better, you could get wiped out if you have a really fed hero against your army. So I don't know how much, if having a abundance of Pyre can wipe you clean in a match.
I don't think it can quite wipe you out, but it can definitely swing the tides of battle, I would say.
Yeah.
For example, taking one of Orzum's abilities would be his Pillar ability, which is very scary, playing versus it. I feel like that one especially is a good example of something that can turn the tide of like a battle or...
The Pillar ability,
like
which one? Is that the...
I don't quite remember the name, but if I recall correctly, it's like in an AoE and it can deal damage or support.
Oh yeah, he drops like the drum.
Yes.
In the middle. He drops.
He quite literally drops a pillar. Yeah.
Yeah, it drops like a little. It's not a drum. Sorry, like a lantern or like a torch. Sorry, like a torch. He drops a torch, and it like gives an AoE ability to your units and against your enemy units too.
Yes, it deals damage and supports your...
I mean, you have to be kind of clever with it because then your enemy can just move out of the area and move away from it. So, like I feel like that's supposed to be the ultimate. Like a lot of the R abilities feel like MOBAs in the sense that those are your strongest ones, and you use them most when you have the most Pyre. So I get that feeling from the abilities. Like they remind me very much like heroes in terms like you have the easy cheap ones on like the QWE, and then your R1 feels like the best one. All right, well, what other things are you looking forward to in the game?
Honestly, I'm really curious to see like the diversity of factions, because right now there's only one full faction, or is it completely full or mostly full, either way. And the Auru are just beginning, like as we speak. They have about 20% complete right now. So I'm really curious to see more of the different factions.
I'm curious to know how they're going to balance these factions, and like
it is hard. And also the plan for them, from what I understood, is if I recall correctly, it was 5 factions that released and then adding more after, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to me because at this point, I think, let's say, obviously we're talking way far in the future. We don't know what's going to happen from there, but let's say there are going to be tournaments of Immortal like down the line, then players might have to know like how to play more than one faction as well. Like you couldn't be able to main just one. Yeah,
that actually is very Age of Empire. I've watched some Age of Empire tournaments and played a little bit, and that like you have players who have different civs, and you'll strike civs to make sure it's like strategically which civs are being used in it. So I wonder if that's a little bit like Age of Empire, where if players end up having like a roster of Immortal or factions they use, and then you might have to strike in terms of gameplay or tournament play. You have to strike, oh, you can't use Orzu in this one, or
yeah, it's actually an entirely also a different question. It's like there's going to be diversity in the factions, but there's also like each faction is going to have like immortals, like different immortals too.
Yeah,
which is like another point worth thinking about. There's a lot of potential for diversity. I would say this, like regardless of balance, things are bound to be interesting. And just I really want to see the Aru complete. It's just that's just me, but I'm very looking forward to that.
I have a feeling that you're gonna play the Aru, I'm gonna play the Koth, and we need to play a game against each other and have the ultimate battle of who is the best. That's all. That's it. That's the battle for
the next
Pyre.
episode. Yeah.
All right, absolutely. All right, everybody. So thanks very much for joining us for this conversation. Like I said, the game is still in pre-alpha, and so there isn't much to go on in terms of how to critique or anything like that. This, what we played can be so different from what is about to come out. Like it can be totally outside the scope, but which doesn't make us any less excited. Any last words, Caerwyn, before we sign off?
Yeah, I think you put it pretty well, but I'm very excited for the future. What we have now is not what there's going to be like a month from now, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. I have no doubt it's going to be good as well.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
All right, everyone, check it out and have a good one.